This is Hannibal back here from the HannibalTV.com, and I'm going to do a very quick review on the Tank Abbott Joe Rogan Experience podcast, which I watched last night. Of course, I've done numerous interviews with UFC Hall. Well, I don't know if he's in the UFC Hall of Fame, but former WCW superstar Tank Abbott. You can watch my Tank Abbott playlist in the description of this video. But I was very happy when I saw he was on the Joe Rogan Experience because I knew that he'd wanted to get on there for a while, but he thought that maybe because of the heat he had with Dana White, Joe Rogan might never have him on. But of course, he's one of the UFC legends, MMA legends, was the most popular fighter in the UFC for a while. Basically, I mean, he as he said in this, he was amateur wrestling since he was a child, uh, training in boxing for many years, and then he later learned submission wrestling. So he was a barroom brawler and a street fighter, but he's underrated as an actual technician because he had the image of the barroom brawler, and he definitely was. He liked to go out and drink, and he said he averaged in his prime, I think before the UFC years, getting into 2 street fights a week, which I have to say, although I'm definitely not as tough as Tank, in the years that I was bouncing full time, I was definitely attacked at least twice a week working in the bars. So when he said that, I thought to myself, okay, maybe I mean I didn't do it for as long as he did, but I've definitely had to be in attack situations for at least, well, from 2001 to 2017 off and on. I was a bouncer full time. So I know what it's like to get in street fights, but it certainly wasn't as violent as the ones that Tank was in, because he talked about when you get into a lot of street fights, you feel less sorry for them. I understand that, because, like, for instance, he says in high school you get in a fight, if you give someone a black eye, it's a big deal, and then with each street fight you get in, your sympathy gets less and less. But he said he did go out looking to fight. He said he would go after the people that were being dicks in bars. And I do have to agree with him. I remember I was working at one bar, and I'm not making this about me, but like, just to give credibility to what he's saying about you lose sympathy for people. I remember during the 2007 hockey series with the Ottawa Senators and the Tampa Bay Lightning, I was working at a bar that I won't name in Ottawa, and there was like 6 fights a night, at least, during the whole time of that series, which was 7 games. Because everyone was going, watching it, getting wasted, and this was like a college bar. And I remember just by the end of that series, let's just say we were not being nice with the people that we were throwing out, because we were just getting fed up of dealing with it, and that we're definitely not having sympathy. So I understand him there. He threw so many shots at John McCartney, it's understandable that he has heat with him. He brings up, I think it was his UFC 6 fight where John, and I forget the name of the opponent. Forgive me, I've had a lot of concussions. But John stood them up when it's supposed to be no rules, and Tank was in control, and he ended up not winning that fight. Whereas if it's supposed to be no rules, why are you standing them up? Because if somebody's on top of you in control, chances are you're not going to get back up. But John stood him up, and he believes that John may have been trying to sway certain fights in certain directions over the years. And I'm surprised. I don't know if it airs live or not. I know the YouTube version doesn't air live because it came out quite a while after the initial picture came out. Not quite a while, but a day or so. But they didn't end up, they may have edited out some of what he said. I don't know, but they definitely left a lot of shots in there on John McCartney. I don't know what, if any, relationship he has with UFC today, but I'm sure Tank is happy that they left those in. Tito Ortiz was not brought up. Nothing from Tank actually brought up WCW at one point, and it's funny because Joe Rogan's not a wrestling fan, but for wrestlers or wrestling fans, and he has a lot of fans as wrestling fans, and a lot of UFC fans watched him as a wrestler. I think he's underrated. His popularity in WCW, I mean, at one point they were going to make him world champion, which they should have because he was a credible guy. I mean, look at all the other people that they made world champions. David Arquette, Vince Russo, Jeff Jarrett. And I'm sorry, to me, Tank Abbott is a more credible champion than Jeff Jarrett as a world champion. He's more known. He was on Friends, for God's sake. I mean, it would have made more sense, but God forbid they ever have a good booker in WCW after the Kevin Sullivan NWO run. Just seemed to get worse and worse. But I was disappointed that they didn't go at all into his WCW stuff, which, by the way, if you go into the description of this video and watch my interviews with him, he's got a lot of great stories from WCW. You can hear about his hatred of Lex Luger and Terry Taylor. But he was mentioning in WCW, he was one of the people that still had time left on their contract after WCW was bought out. So it was during that time where he was like basically sitting at home drinking a lot, which he ended up getting a liver and kidney transplant. He'd been drinking all of his life, but I mean, that didn't help his health sitting at home. And surprisingly, WWE never gave him a shot. Maybe he wanted to go back into, that's one question I'll ask him if I interview him again, which I'm sure I will. Like, why he didn't try and get in WWE. I guess he probably just wanted to go right in back into MMA, which he did. They Yeah, I'm surprised they didn't ask him more on that. Joe Rogan, I've seen a lot of Joe Rogan experiences. He didn't seem like he was very respectful in this interview and stuff, but he didn't it seemed like he was almost not asleep, but he didn't seem like he was into it as much as I've seen him in others. And he didn't talk as much as he has in others. Like, for instance, when Joe Rogan had The Rock on not too long ago, it's funny. Joe Rogan talked, it seemed like almost more than The Rock. It almost seemed like it was Joe Rogan telling The Rock stories for a lot of the podcasts. And he's the podcast master. I'm not critiquing him. I just found it odd that, like, first of all, he just didn't seem like as into it as normal. And there were some topics that weren't covered or maybe were cut out that I thought would have been good stories. But overall, there's a lot of street fighting stories in it. Tank plugs his book, which is available on Amazon, so I'm glad he got that plugged. It's stories. It's technically stories under a different name to avoid legal issues. I don't know what the statute of limitations is for bar fights, but if it's 7 years, he could probably legally talk about the stuff that he did. But Tank, as I said, he's one of the nicest people in the wrestling business. I'll consider him a wrestler because he was a wrestler. he speaks the truth. Joe Rogan even said it in this. He doesn't lie. He speaks the truth. He may have a high opinion of himself, but at least he's honest about it. At least he doesn't pretend to be humble. But as a person, he's actually a nice person. Kevin says, "I wish I could interview the cop's son that he beat up." Yeah, it'd be interesting. I am maybe going to do an interview with the guy that took all those elbows from Gary Goodridge at the UFC in Puerto Rico, with Tank and him at the same time. Sometime in the near future, Tank is friends with that guy. But anyways, I would suggest you guys watch it, and I'm happy he got on there. He was also on Rampage Jackson's podcast recently, and wish him all the best. And you know what? With all the, I know he's still. It showed in this that he had a hard time remembering some things, and obviously he's been through hell. He broke down at one point, talking about how close to death he came. He actually legally died like 5 times. So I'm proud of him that he survived all that. He is a survivor. He is one of the toughest people in the world. But yeah, I wish him all the best, and I hope with all the revelations and like stem cell treatments and regeneration, and I'm hearing from Tony Robbins, who is like stays real close within the modern medicine world. They're actually working on being able to grow new human organs and stuff within the next 10 years. So hopefully Tank's only 59. With the advances of medicine, he'll be around a long time. And his wife Sally has done wonders for him. He's lucky to have her, and she's a great person. So shout out to her. Hope everyone watches it. It was a good interview. And check out Tank Abbott's playlist right here on the Hannibal TV. It's in the description of this video.